Delighted to be joined by Quantity Surveyor, own Darby of Darby and Associates. Own, welcome to the Live Cost Construction Experience again. This time in different circumstances.
Hey Kieran, how are you?
Good on.
Indeed.
Just slightly different than the last time. I suppose the last time we had you on, we got great feedback on practical tips. I suppose you were given around pricing jobs, and that would have been, on a day to day. When we running our business on a day to day, I suppose things have changed quite drastically in the last couple of weeks. What's been the general sort of feedback and the general conversation from your customers?
Yeah, it's been a turbulent week or two for sure. In my own line of work, as I mentioned to you before, I'm kind of split between clients on residential projects and also builders tendering for projects as well and doing the progress claims and that sort of thing. So on both sides of the table, there's been a bit of an earthquake. From my client side, I've had one job shelved definitely, for at least client is just too nervous to proceed at the moment and figures they'll hold out and that's from a personal point of view, their own employment situation. So they just want to hold off and see how this pans out. And then on the builder side,
go ahead.
On the builder side, then it's there's just a bit more worry out there as far as what's in the pipeline. Again, a couple of projects I've heard of that have been shelved. It's just the unknown factor that's kind of causing this. People. It all depends on it comes from the top down, and if there's issues with the financial side of it, it's going to filter down through and that's going to put the projects on hold,
Yeah, it seems to be. I suppose you are. The reason we're keen to get you on is you're in a sort of unique position where you're talking to a lot of building companies. I suppose what we want to do is a lot of business owners are doing this on their own essentially, and they don't really get to communicate with other business owners. What we're trying to do is get that feedback out there. So first and foremost, we do really appreciate you putting your time into this, just to sort of share what's going on across the market and sort of what you're seeing out there. In your opinion, like, how has the market been sort of up until, let's say, 2 to 3 weeks ago? How do you think everything has been tracking? What's it been looking like for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's been really good up until January and February were for most builders, I would say they were all quite happy with where they were, what jobs they had lined up. Rates are back to sort of profitable levels that they were all enjoying, I suppose, and that's kind of all been thrown into jeopardy at the moment. Even from my own point of view, my own business, it's been one of the busiest 2 months I've ever had. So it's kind of, the balloon has been burst somewhat. We were getting back good momentum on a lot of projects there locally and around Dublin, and that's the worry now that it's kind of took a real shunt.
Was it looking that way sort of for the next 18, 24 months? You think that was the way it was going to continue? Or
from the point of view of the projects that I'm working on, a lot of the clients on these extensions for refurbs and extension refurbs in the residential sector, these were clients that were investing in their existing houses. The families are growing, etc. So they wanted to expand on what they had and not necessarily move. So, yeah, they were the main kind of clients, and also new builds as well. They were supposed to be going ahead. So, yeah, like it's certainly going to change the way the outlook for the next 6 months, I would say.
So just on that point there, you touched on is how do you think this will impact? So if I've tendered for a project. And the project is due to start, let's call it, put a date in August, September. And what's the impact of that on me? I mean, in terms of, obviously, I'm going to have issues to deal with.
Yeah, I mean, projects, if you draw the line at where projects that were tendered and projects that, had been given the go-ahead, I suppose, anything that was tendered without a letter of intent to start the job, they're basically, there's nothing agreed until, I suppose, that letter of intent goes out and they have the job. But even at that point, it could still roll back and the job mightn't go ahead. For the jobs that are on site, then, this is where the issues come in now. If we're currently not in a a lockdown situation like other countries like Germany and Spain maybe in, and it has some pretty significant contractual implications for jobs that are currently going ahead. There's a element in the contract called force majeure, which is literally meaning an act of God. That would be an event that is completely out of the control of both parties, that's going to seriously affect the progress and the finish date for that project. So we're not in that stage yet, but if over the next week or two, if depending on whether the government decide to go into a much more locked down situation and sites have to close and that, we're getting into that territory of force majeure implications on contracts and delays and potentially costs as well. So it's all kind of new. We haven't really had one of these force majeure events, I suppose, in Ireland in recent times. So this is going to have to play itself out.
Yeah, so I suppose the advice being at that stage is now is probably a good time to go and start seeking some advice around what potential measures you can put in place if something like that was to happen. Yeah,
I mean, as far as what's continuing on sites at the moment is it's proceed as normal. There's no reason to I suppose stop working on site as long as you comply with the HSE guidelines. To keep 2 meters apart. And I know the CIF have released further guidelines on that specifically for sites. Keeping say workers in separate rooms and. Lunch breaks are to be, taken separately and staggered and in different rooms and that sort of thing. So I suppose the CIF are trying to do as much as they can without fully stopping work. I did hear of another builder that, shut down works completely there on Monday, kind of slightly prematurely, and then actually came back on site again. And he's back working this week. So, it's all uncharted territory, this really. So we just got to play it by ear each week and take the advice that the government's given. It's
going to be a difficult one, isn't it? Like I fully understand. CIF to pretty much try and do what they can, and everyone's trying to do what they can. But I mean, it's probably unrealistic, isn't it, to think that we're going to be able to run sites at 2 meters apart at all times. And it's difficult. They're a compressed place, with a lot of going on.
It is, and there's just certain work elements that can't proceed with just one person, and from a health and safety point of view as well, so it's really going to get tricky at some point to maintain that. So look, all I would say on that front is some of the builders I work for, they have some great health and safety guys that have come up with job specific method statements and that sort of thing, specifically relating to the coronavirus. And
very good.
It's always worth a while investing in the likes of those guys. They'll guide you through it, and they're as close to the HSE as you will get, a Health and Safety Authority and the HSE guidelines.
Yeah,
they'll be on the book with it.
It's a good point, because things have drastically changed in the last couple of weeks. How are the companies that you're talking to? How are they adapting to this situation?
Yeah, there's definitely a level of nervousness out there, but at the same time, there are still a lot of tenders coming through. Like I had quite a few come through this week already. From the client's point of view as well, if there isn't, if there's not a huge banking lending institution involved, if the client has the money to do the project, they're possibly seeing this as an opportunity as well. That, like, if you think about it, like if we're coming into sort of a downward trend here economically, that the client might actually get better value out of the process, and that will kind of be based on the idea that there won't be as much work around, and you'll get better competition from the builders. So now, how that is going to play out, again, there's two issues there from the builder's point of view. I would see that rates could potentially, supply rates definitely will, they're going to be impacted by this, because we do get a lot of our materials from UK and mainland Europe. And the last time we were talking, like, one of the actual main issues we were talking about was Brexit, and that neither has gone away, and also it's compounded by this virus and the ability it has to get materials delivered over from, say, the UK or mainland Europe. So that's going to have an impact both on the time it takes the materials to get here, and potentially the price as well. So supply prices could go up for builders materials. And then ironically, if there's, a lot more competition out there and there's a lot less work going around, labor rates could potentially drop. So it's not necessarily going to be an all out, tender rates are going to drop significantly.
Yeah.
They might, but at the same time, there's going to be supply issues as well in the supply chain. So it's, as I said, it's uncharted territory. So we just have to keep an eye on it week by week, see what the suppliers are saying, keep the ear to the ground on the subcontractors and that sort of thing as well. How much work they have in the pipeline. But yeah, it'll all filter from the top down, really, from the clients down through the design teams and onto the builders. That's usually the way this goes. Yeah.
Have you been starting to be engaged with video? Obviously, we're sitting here being able to do what we do because we're both generally office based. But have you seen many of your clients looking to engage you through video conference and stuff like that?
Oh yeah, it's all the rage now. This week I'm on Zoom, I'm on Skype, I'm on MS Teams, the whole shebang. So. It's crazy how much it's changed, and one of the jokes I saw, I think it was on LinkedIn or something there during the week. The old phrase, "I survived a meeting that could have been an email." It's actually true. So it's certainly reduced the travel time to meetings and that sort of thing. But yeah, look, I've been on several conference calls now for the last week, and getting in those MS Teams. There could be. So one particular meeting, there was 7 or 8 people on it, and it's a whole new ball game because if you're not on a video call, it can be quite, you're just it's bad connections and quite monotone. Some of the people talk, they can be quite monotone. It takes a lot of time to concentrate on what the people are saying and how the meeting is actually proceeding. So I suppose just. One of the things I was reading there during the week, it's really important to have an agenda for these video conference calls. Yeah. And there's other minor things you can just to do to improve the quality of it, just turning off your microphone when you're not speaking because you hear people typing in the background and clearly they're not engaged in the meeting or whatever. So, the bit of sort of etiquette about the conference calls now this is all new, of course. I never really had to do this before. As far as other technology sort of is concerned with my role, what I found this week is I'm doing the full social distancing thing. I'm not going to site, but I'm still in very close contact with all my builders. What I've got them to do is actually do regular video updates for me, and this is down to literally telling them turn your phone to landscape mode, hit record, and walk through the site and just speak to me as if I'm beside you, and just run me through everything you've done this week, and we'll catch this in the next progress claim. It's obviously not ideal. I would much, the obvious thing is to be out on site and actually there with the builder physically seeing it. But this is the next best thing. And I've actually found that those videos, so they send the videos through. They're 2-3 minute videos, say, of each floor, and it just gives me a great idea of what work they're still doing without me actually having to physically be there. And they're all sending them through to me on WhatsApp, and I've got a record of them there. And if need be, I'm sending them on to the client's QS for review. It's just as good for them as it is for me, So that's one of the things that's really helped in the last week or so as well. Yeah,
we've been amazed ourselves. We obviously, it's a face-to-face industry we work in. Everybody we deal with, whether it's the QS, whether it's going to the suppliers, it's generally face-to-face. Our platform in its nature is online, but we've been amazed this week when we start to push people towards, listen, let's do this online, how willing they were to start to do extra training, bring in new staff, we do upskilling training, we do all sorts of different training modules, and how easy it was, to be honest with you. We thought there would be a big sort of
pushback,
a bit of a pushback, and maybe a bit of a period where we'd have to get people to adapt to this. But it's literally, you mentioned Zoom there, we're literally just sending a Zoom link, people are logging on, and what we found is actually reducing the amount of time that we spend in a training module, whereby people are getting onto a meeting and they know, as you touched on, there's an agenda here, I need to get through this and this, and we're not going to sit and talk about the match because there's no football on anyway. So let's just get this done and let's get back to what we're at. So
productivity, I would say, definitely from my point of view, is up. I would spend I was just actually looking on Friday. I was doing, usually every Friday, just track my mileage or whatever, expenses and tolls. And it's like massively down now because I actually don't even need my car. I'm lucky enough that I can walk to work. So I've walked in for the last week and I haven't needed the car to go to sites. So I'm actually in the office more and I'm actually getting a hell of a lot more done and getting through the phone calls and the emails actually more efficiently because I'm not on the M50, every day or going through tolls and that sort of thing. So it's actually, ironically, it's helping with productivity.
What other technology then have you been using to help you through this situation? Obviously, you're office bound. You are doing the right things with self-isolate and all that stuff. So, what else have you been using just to guide you through this period?
I suppose I have a student working for me at the moment as well. So he's now working from home. I've dropped the PC off to his place, and we're just keeping in touch just through instant messenger and that sort of things, which is great. Other things that I would always use anyway, which if people haven't heard of them before, like they use an online sort of to-do list like MeisterTask or Trello. Yep. They're brilliant systems just for keeping track because there's so much happening now. You just need to take a note or something and come back to it later. It's all there and it syncs through from your iPad to your phone to your PC or whatever. And similarly, if you're taking minutes, even in these conference call meetings, I find Evernote is absolutely brilliant for that because you can take screenshots, you can do audio recordings in that, and again, it syncs through all your devices. I really find that helpful now as well. I've noticed actually WhatsApp in particular now is becoming, nearly like the default method of communication. During the week there was a lot of phone calls that were dropped mid calls, and I understand the operators are having trouble now actually with the amount of phone calls that are going through the system. Imagine. And equally, broadband is struggling. I think I read during the week that the unlimited data now is being looked at on a few of the providers because just so many people are streaming or doing the video calls through MS Teams or whatever. So. It's interesting how they're adapting to all this as well,
Yeah. I mean, the couple there for anyone that's using shared environments. I know I use Google as my email provider. So if you're looking for shared documents and stuff like that, they do a suite of G Sheets and
G Docs and
Sheets, which are great for collaborating remotely and stuff like that. So Google do have a lot, an army of tools there, which would be worth looking at as well. It's a strange time. I mean, a couple of my own points to add in there as well, I suppose, is that I suppose companies can go out and look on one example being thinkbusiness.ie released something there just on Friday with various levels of financial support. Obviously the local enterprise office will be bringing in, aided by Enterprise Ireland, and I know Microfinance Ireland are offering a package of loans.
The loans at a reduced rate,
Yeah. So I mean, in terms of an outlook, all we can do, I think, as you say, all we can do with this is play it by ear, is adjust and adapt.
Yeah, we've got to take it week by week and just adapt as it comes. Look, I think before all this kicked off, there was quite a demand, but obviously the employment implications here for a lot of the clients, especially in the residential sector, it is going to have an effect. So it remains to be seen how quick, if this is solved in the next couple of weeks or months or whatever, how quick we can turn this back around. There's still a demand for housing. There's still, housing shortages in Dublin in particular. So you would imagine they will still be there when this thing eventually is, when we get a handle on it. So hopefully things will continue. I mean, honestly, I am expecting a bit of a downturn on my own side of things, business wise.
Yep.
But it's just about keeping the connections there with all those with my clients that I have, and trying to help them through as well with technology advice and that sort of thing to try and keep everyone just get through this storm.
Yeah, absolutely. And if any of our listeners want to get in contact with you just around, as you say, technology advice, pricing advice, quantity surveying services, where can they contact you?
Yeah, you'll get everything on my website there, derbyqs.ie.
derbyqs.ie. Oh, listen, we really appreciate you giving the time up to this to try and get some information out there, I think, which is important through these times. So thanks for giving us your time, and hopefully all the best through this rocky old period.
Yeah, no problem, Kieran. And listen, thanks for having me on again.
No worries at all. Thanks, all. Appreciate it. Cheers.
Bye now.